Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Beatson Talks, where today I am delighted to be joined by Patrick Baines and Jemma Byrne, who are going to talk to us about quite a difficult subject. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not local to Scotland. I was born in the hills of rural mid Wales. I had a lovely childhood, went to a lovely little village primary and high school, and family life, idyllic. Two of the best parents you could ever ask for, and 4 sisters and a brother. So busy, lovely childhood. Scotland has always played a big part in my life, really. We used to come on holidays, playing golf and visiting grandparents and just loving it. And then 5 years ago, had the opportunity to move up here. Didn't take much thinking about, really. Loved living in Glasgow. Yeah, there's also been a lot of tough stuff in there since the boys were born, which I'm sure we'll come on to.
Well, if you don't mind, are you okay to tell us about that then? Because you have suffered a very traumatic loss.
Yeah, of course. So we kind of start the story in December, a few days before Christmas of 2021. Welcome 2 boys into the world, and everything's great. Everything wasn't great for the next few months because you don't sleep and everything's really tough. But any parent, will tell you that. And then just as we were getting over that kind of hump, I'd had a lovely day out with a couple of my cousins over in Edinburgh. We were doing touristy things, seeing the castle, and it was lovely. And then I was at my sister's house, and I could just sense something wasn't quite right with my sister, and drags me upstairs, and I'm thinking, what's going on here, Nick? And I have a phone call from my dad to say that Mum, who had been in hospital in the January, just after my boys were born, and she kind of rushed in, and it was a bit obviously very worrying. Mm-hmm. But the prognosis was fine. I think it was a kind of emergency surgery, and it was kind of off you go home and recover. But sadly, that wasn't the case, and you just open your phone to see your dad kind of looking at you. Something's wrong straight away. Yeah. There's no ifs and buts. So we then, it's kind of hard as well because my elder sister Emma, who at the time was battling breast cancer as well, she was with Dad, and we've lost Em since as well. It's hard to look back on that. So Mum became ill really quickly, but it was very hard because I've obviously got 2 new little chaps to look after, and we're 400 miles away. Mum was in mid Wales. Yeah. So we went and visited Mum. This was still on the understanding that Mum would have a good few months, So Mum got to see the boys. I mean, she was up in the January when the boys were a few weeks old, looking after them like she does, and then, I took the boys to see her. She was on the bed, and it was a bit of a shock because, every time you see your mum before that, she's up and she's on her feet and happy, and
they're your pillar of strength.
Of course, yeah. And I know the vast majority of people, think that their mum is the best, and it's such a cliche, but she was the most selfless. Mm-hmm. I'm a parent now, and there's times you struggle. I think I never in my life saw my mum struggle. Yeah. There were times when she would, but she would never show it, or she had this amazing ability to just carry on and everything's fine, and and just get through it. So said goodbye to Mum, and then said, look, I'll be down in a couple of weeks. Had a difficult conversation with Dad, saying, look, Dad, when the moment does come, when Mum is, near the end, let me know and I'll come down and, spend a bit of time with her. But I never got that opportunity because at midnight, maybe a week later, my phone goes. And when a phone goes at midnight, it's not going to be good news. But I still, I had no idea that it was going to come. I thought it was going to be, look, Mum's taking a turn, come down here. And I reacted. I was hysterical. I kind of couldn't. You understand the words that your dad and your sister are saying, but they're not landing in your brain. They're just kind of. That was awful. We lost Mum, and then not more than 8 months after that, my sister Emma, who had been diagnosed with I think triple negative breast cancer in 2016 or 2017. She's in her mid-40s. She was fit and healthy. But like breast cancer, it doesn't matter if you're old, if you're young, if you're fit, if you're not. Like a lot of cancers. And Em was, I think, I don't know, it's hard to deal with bereavement when you've not really experienced it. Before this, I'd had grandparents die who were of a really old age. And even now, I kind of think you try and negotiate with yourself and think, well, Mum was 68, which is still
young,
especially in this day. Life expectancy is another 10 years for women at least. Yeah, soon after, in the January, again, you get a phone call from my brother-in-law who is, I've known my whole life, the most lovely person you could ever wish to meet, gone through life together, and Phil phones and just says, look, your sister's in a hospice. And I just remember driving down to the hospice. I was very naive to what a hospice was, really. I had no idea of how lovely and the staff are there. And I mean, obviously they are to work in such an environment, but I just thought it was quite a dark place and quite a formal place where you just kind of silently, walk around trying to keep everything together. But it's been hard since, really. It's been, 18 months now. But it feels very fresh. So within the space of a year, we lost Mum. We lost my elder sister Emma. Last autumn, my grandmother. This is the lovely side of death, if you forgive that phrase. She was 98. Mm-hmm. She had spent the last 30 years of her life living, or 40 years of her life living in an idyllic log cabin in the Perthshire Hills, surrounded by red squirrels, deer. And I think it's a large part of what I kind of fell in love with Scotland, really, of just sitting on her, in her sunroom, watching the deer and the squirrels and just the heather and everything, being perfect. She spent the last 30 years saying, I don't want to ever go into a home. I just want to peacefully slip away. And she did. Mm-hmm. My dad was there. My uncle, who'd spent the last 10 years looking after her, so amazingly was there. And Dad rang me and just said, look, your grandma slipped away, and of course there's a sadness, there's a, oh gosh, but there's a feeling of almost a kind of relief, really, that she got her wish. She didn't become ill, that she wanted, she had to get in, spend the last few days of her life in a hospital or anything like that. And then a few days before we were due to hold the memorial, my uncle, who had spent the last 10 years looking after his mum, my grandmother, I get a call, and it's my cousin. And again, that something's awful's happened, and he's passed away suddenly. So four bereavements in less than 2 years, really, or just 2 years. I'm somebody in life who, probably to my detriment, sometimes in the career, I've had bosses come up to me and say, Patrick, do that thing now. Don't relax, and I'll be saying, look, there's plenty of time. There's, I can worry about that tomorrow. It's fine. And with life and bereavement, you don't know. You know that 99.99999% of fit, healthy people are going to be there tomorrow. You don't know that you're going to get a phone call saying that they're seriously ill and they're not going to recover. Mm.
So Jemma, you're the psychologist who leads the bereavement group. Where is the actual physical space? Do you do it at the Beatson?
So we have a variety of venues throughout Glasgow. So we purposely make sure that they're quite neutral venues. So rather than being on the hospital campus or anywhere like that. So we've had a variety of venues out in like the south side, House for an Art Lover. We've been over at the West End and the university campus at Glasgow Uni. We've been over at kind of Charing Cross, quite a variety. So we try and make it as accessible as possible as well. But just thinking on what you had said there, Patrick, about that, coming into touch with how finite and precious life is as well. And it reminds me of quite common themes in the group. We talk about that in week 3 in the groups, about how quite often people don't know what to say as well, because I think when people are confronted with grief and someone that is grieving themselves, it feels quite confronting or uncomfortable to think about, life being precious.
Yeah. I think going back to and anybody who's listening who's thinking of attending this wonderful service, I think the first week I was quite chipper in a way. I was kind of doing that thing that I used to do at school sometimes, where a teacher would ask a question. I'm not saying you were teachers, but you were kind of in charge of running things, and you'd have that 2 or 3 seconds of silence. And I at school, I hated it, and I always used to sometimes even put my hand up if I didn't understand the question, just because I wanted to kind of say something. And I know I was like that on the first week, very kind of chatty and very willing to. And I remember in the second week, I nearly didn't come because I was just feeling just awful and just sad and empty and hollow, like everything, that comes with bereavement. And Jemma here and her colleague Emma kind of at the end of the session came up to me and said, "You okay? You've been very quiet." And that's the kind of peaks and the troughs of the sessions, really. I think there are times when you're sat there and you're able to kind of engage, and there's other times when I was just sat there and I just didn't want to speak.
Yeah.
But that's fine. If you don't want to speak, it's fine. There's no pressure to. You can sit there for 8 weeks and not speak if you want. You might find it harder to kind of maybe engage and learn things, but there's no pressure, and that's what you were really good at, actually, is just giving that option, if you want, of just if everything's too much, just sit and just be quiet and just listen to conversation.
Just be there. Yeah, and that's I guess a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I so appreciate that you shared that, Patrick, that was your own experience there, because a lot of the feedback we've had is that the first 2 weeks especially can be really difficult. As I was saying earlier, we're sort of almost zooming in on what grief is and what that can be like, and in the space people can get a lot from that and feel, as you said, quite chipper initially, and then it's in the space in between it can feel quite heavy. And then people have that, it's very normal to ask, do I want to come back? Should I come back? And that's why actually the group is structured the way that it is too, so that people don't have to come and talk. We've got the content there that sort of supports the conversations that we have. So that takes the onus off the participants and people like yourself, Patrick, that you don't have to come and tell your story if you don't want to. You can come and you can listen, or you can contribute or share share as much as you feel able and willing to, and that's always important.
How important do you think it is that Beatson Cancer Charity have this service?
I think it's hugely important. I think it's the connections and the relationships that you see. I feel very privileged to see that over the course of 8 weeks. People come in the room, they start off as strangers, and you see these connections just blossom over the weeks. How people keep in touch and how they prop each other up and how they have very honest conversations as well. I think that's invaluable. People that maybe wouldn't have known each other in any other walks of life are, connected in this room for reasons they didn't ask for. And, I'm sitting from a different perspective, but I think it's hugely important for people to have those connections and to not feel so isolated or alone in their grief, because that so commonly happens. Even though they're maybe surrounded by lots of family or friends, or the opposite, quite often people feel maybe, adrift with their grief. So they find their sort of tribe quite often with the groups. So it's amazing to just be even a small part of that and help to facilitate that.
So, it can be difficult for people to open up, but I think particularly, rightly or wrongly, for men, many men find it difficult to open up. What would you say to men going through this?
I'm a good person to ask, because I've never probably been too willing to talk about the important things in life, even to close family and friends. There are so many great charities out there. You look at mental health for men and things like that. I think a big stigma in this last decade or so has been lifted. Just do it. Just get in touch. The worst thing that can happen is you go to a session and you think, this isn't for me. But I don't see how that could happen, really. And from a male point of view, usually, like you say, rightly or wrongly, and it is a fact that sometimes, or not sometimes, a lot of the time we skirt around the important issues of life and hard things with a kind of outdated macho kind of thing. It shouldn't be like that. No one should go through life suffering physical pain or saying, well, I'm a man, I should cope. And it's the same with mental pain, which what bereavement is. It can be physical, but it's a mental struggle, and it's a mental torture in a way. And having people help you through it is immeasurably helpful. The people that are there to help and the people that are there that are suffering with bereavement will get you through it.
Listen, you're both doing incredible things, Jemma, you in your work, and Patrick, for being so open and sharing that. And it's something, as you've said, you don't want to think about having to go to a bereavement service. It's the thing that nobody wants to have to go, but my goodness, thank goodness it exists. And I'm sure you'll have opened it up to so many other people. So thank you so much for that. I'm sure your boys will be super proud of their dad going forward. Thank you for listening. And if you would like to find out more about the bereavement service and any of the services Beatson Cancer Charity offer, then please check out beatsoncancercharity.org.